The old, heavy passenger bus stopped at the beginning of the red dirt road, which used to be the familiar turn leading to the small hamlet by the river. The sun had just risen. The mist still lingered on the grass along the roadside, and the wind carried the smell of young mud, the smell of ripe rice from the distant fields. Thao pulled her peeling suitcase, hugged a cloth bag and got off, taking a deep breath of the smell of the countryside she had been away from for 15 years. Beside her, Linh, her 8-year-old daughter, looked around with curious eyes. "Mum, it's so quiet here." Thao smiled, her voice hoarse. "Yes, much quieter than the city." Her maternal hometown was deep in the lower reaches. Where bamboo groves rustled, the dirt road meandered. With each step, Thao felt memories flood back. The small road running between 2 rows of areca nuts, the purple wildflowers on the banks, the distant crowing of roosters, and the figure of her silver-haired grandmother sitting in front of the house, weaving a bamboo basket. It all seemed like yesterday, but also as far away as a dream. Thao returned not because she missed him, but because she had nowhere else to go. The marriage had broken down. Her husband had betrayed her. Her job was gone. Her money was gone. The city was just a cold concrete wall. When Aunt Bar, her grandmother's younger sister, called to say that the old house was still there, just abandoned for many years, she was silent for a long time and then said, "Please keep the key for me. I will come back." The motorbike taxi carrying mother and daughter weaved through the old road covered with green moss. Along the way, the trees were dense, dry leaves were piled up, and grass grew shoulder high. When the car stopped in front of the gate, Thao was stunned. The iron gate was now covered with vines. The wooden sign, Mrs. Tunam's house, was broken in half, lying tilted in the grass. The tiled roof was moss-coloured. The walls were mottled with mould. Everything was silent, quiet like a forgotten memory. Little Linh held her mother's hand and asked softly, Mom, is this Grandma's house? Thao nodded, her eyes blurred. Yes, Grandma's house. And also my house, honey. She pushed the gate. The rusty hinges creaked loudly. Weeds rustled underfoot. Dust flew hazily in the sunlight. The house appeared before her eyes. The tiled roof collapsed in one corner. The porch was covered with leaves. The windows were tightly closed. A stray cat ran past. On the porch, Grandma's old sandals still lay where they used to be. Thao choked up. 15 years have passed. Everything seems to be waiting for her to return, to let the breath of people again. She turned to her daughter. You see, no one has lived here for a long time, so the grass is growing all over. But we will clean it up, and it will be beautiful again. Linh nodded, smiling innocently. She did not fully understand the meaning of returning to the countryside, only seeing this as a new adventure. When Thao opened the wooden door, a strong, musty smell rushed in. The air in the house was thick, as if it had been imprisoned for many years. The tables and chairs were covered with thick dust. Cobwebs covered the corners of the walls. The photo of her grandmother on the altar was faded. The glass frame cracked. On the floor, there were leaves, dead insects, and a layer of ash about half a finger thick. Thao sighed, but her eyes were not desperate. Let's clean tomorrow, okay? Yes, Linh replied excitedly. The first night, they spread a mat in the middle room. The flashlight was weak. The crickets chirped in the garden. Linh was asleep, while Thao lay restless. The old ceiling creaked in the wind. She remembered the years when she had run away from poverty, thinking that just going far away would bring happiness. Unexpectedly, the cycle of life brought her back to the starting point. She looked at her child and promised silently, "No matter how difficult it is, I will build you a proper home." The next morning, sunlight shone through the crack in the door, shining on the wall. Thao woke up early, boiled water, and washed her child's face. The cool river breeze wafted in, bringing the breath of home. She picked up the phone and called Aunt Bia. "Auntie, I'm back. The house is still very solid, but it's too dirty." Auntie smiled. "Let me call some kids in the neighborhood to come clean it up. They used to love us very much." At noon, 4 young men carrying lawnmowers, blades, bamboo brooms, hoes and shovels entered the yard. The leader was Minh, tall, tanned, with a sincere Western accent. "Miss Thao, Aunt Bar asked us to come and clean up. This place will probably take a few days." Thao shyly said, "I don't have much money. I just need some help cutting grass and collecting trash. I can do the rest." Minh smiled, a smile as clear as the sun. "It's okay. We'll help. Mrs. Tu's family used to give us fruit as a way to repay the favor." The sound of the lawnmower was loud. The blades were spinning. Weeds were falling along the path. Dust was flying everywhere. Sunlight was sparkling through each tiny grain. Linh stood behind her mother, eyes wide open. Thao took out her mask and gloves, started picking up trash, pulling vines and sweeping leaves. Each step was a sound of life returning. The smell of newly cut grass mixed with the musty smell of damp soil. Sweat drenched her back, but her heart felt lighter. Minh and his friends used knives to cut bushes as tall as a person, trimmed bamboo branches, and cleared away rotten tree stumps. Thao gathered piles of grass and piled them outside the gate. Linh helped her mother pick up every fallen tile and broken bottle. Just like that, the whole morning passed in laughter and the sound of engines. At noon, they sat down to rest under the mango tree. The river breeze blew, cool. Minh poured water and said, "Auntie, when we were little, we often came here to ask for fruit. Your grandmother was very kind. We were so happy to see you back." Thao smiled, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, children. If Grandma was still alive, she would be very happy." In the afternoon, they continued. Thao and Linh started cleaning inside the house. She opened all the doors to let the wind in. The damp smell gradually faded, replaced by the smell of sunlight and wind. She wrapped a towel around herself, holding a feather duster to sweep each wooden shelf and each door frame. Dust flew up in layers, sparkling in the slanted light. Linh held a small towel and wiped the table and chairs. Every time she patted the table, the dust rose like mist. "Cough, cough. Mom, there's so much dust." "Yes, keep it up. After we clean up, we'll have a beautiful house." They discovered an old rusty chest in the corner of the cupboard. Thao used a screwdriver to gently pry it open, the sound of iron making a clack. Inside were a few of her grandmother's ao dai, a notebook, and a few old photos. She tremblingly flipped it open. The yellowed paper, the familiar slanted writing. "If Thao ever returns, please keep this house. Home is a place to remember, not to abandon." She was silent, tears welling up. Linh saw it, bewildered. "What's wrong, Mom?" "I miss Grandma so much, honey." The whole afternoon, mother and daughter worked hard to clean. She used soapy water to scrub the floor, used a brush to scrub each tile. Her hands were red and sore, sweat was dripping, but each tile that shone made her feel strangely happy. Linh brought a dry cloth and knelt down to wipe with her mother. Her 2 small hands were soaked. Her hair was sticky with sweat. Thao told her to rest, but Linh shook her head. I want to help Mom. Out on the porch, a group of young men gathered the dry grass into several high piles and lit them on fire. Smoke billowed. The fragrant smell of burning grass spread throughout the garden. The sound of bamboo crackling in the fire. Thao stood at the door and looked out. The sunset reflected off the smoke, creating a soft pink glow. In that moment, she felt as if her grandmother was there, smiling as she cleaned the house. When the sun set, exhausted, everyone sat in front of the yard, looking back at the results. The grass was low, the path was clear, the row of areca trees had tall, straight stems. Minh said, "Tomorrow we will come back to clean the backyard, cut down the fallen trees." Thao nodded, her voice small but full of gratitude. "Thank you very much." That night, mother and daughter slept better. The wind from the river blew in cool. The sound of crickets and frogs chirped. The moonlight shone through the window, shining on the old flower mat. Thao looked at her sleeping child, her lips smiling slightly. She never thought that just cleaning the house could make her feel so peaceful. The next morning, Minh brought 2 more people. They started from the backyard, where weeds grew thickly, vines clung to the kitchen wall. The sound of the engine, the sound of knives, the sound of falling leaves. Thao and Linh helped sweep, collect leaves, and scoop up piles of rotten trash. Each hoe stroke brought a new smell of soil. In the corner of the garden, she discovered a guava tree with half its trunk dry. She trimmed and watered it, hoping it would come back to life. By noon, her shirt was soaked with sweat. Her hands were sore. But looking at the clean garden, she felt happy. Minh said, "You know, we've cleaned many houses, but this one feels the most sorry." Thao just smiled. "Because this is Grandma's house. Grandma is very kind." In the afternoon, they repainted the door. The new paint was a light blue, shining in the afternoon sun. Thao used a small brush. Linh painted the frame. The paint got on her hands and hair. She smiled, looked at her daughter, and saw innocent joy in her eyes. Both of them seemed to be redrawing hopes for their lives. When she finished, Thao opened the door and the wind rushed in. The smell of new paint mixed with the smell of sunlight and soil, strangely fragrant. She stood in the middle of the house, took a deep breath, and felt like the house was breathing again. In the afternoon, the cicadas chirped. Outside the gate, villagers stopped and were surprised. "Oh my God, has Mrs. Two's house been cleaned? It's so beautiful." An old woman called out, "Is that Thao? She looks so much like Grandma when she was young." Thao smiled. Her eyes filled with tears. "Yes, I'm home, Grandma." That evening, she turned on the only round lamp in the middle of the house. The yellow light radiated warmth. Linh sat on the floor, drawing with a pencil, while Thao sat sewing the old curtain. Outside, the night wind blew through the areca trees, carrying the rustling sound of leaves like Grandma's lullaby. The next morning, when the first rays of sunlight shone through the bougainvillea trellis, the chirping of sparrows woke the mother and daughter. There was no longer the heavy, musty smell of the first days, only the smell of river wind, freshly cut grass, and a bit of earthy scent. Thao opened the window, took a deep breath, then turned to wake Linh. "Wake up. Today, we'll clean the kitchen and Grandma's wooden cabinets." Linh rubbed her eyes, smiled sleepily. "Yes. Mom, let me have breakfast, and then I'll make it together." Breakfast was just cold rice fried with eggs, but it was surprisingly delicious. In the old kitchen, sunlight shone through the window, dust flying and sparkling. Thao put a pot of boiling water on the wood stove. While cooking, she looked around. The kitchen walls were mottled, the walls were cracked, but she could feel the scent of people gradually coming back to it. After breakfast, the mother and daughter started work. Thao brought a broom and a basin of warm water. Linh hugged a pile of rags. "You wipe the chairs. Wipe the cabinets. Mum, scrub the floor." The sound of the brush scrubbing the tile floor was heard, each piece of dirt peeled off, revealing the red brick color underneath. Sweat was dripping from her forehead, but she didn't feel tired. With each stain that disappeared, her heart felt a little lighter, as if she had wiped away years of hard work. Linh wiped and played around every time her mother wasn't paying attention. She used water to draw circles on the wall. "Mom, I'm drawing a smiley face." Thao turned back, laughed, and patted her son's head. "If you keep laughing like that, our family will laugh too." Mother and son looked at each other, smiles spreading throughout the house, dispelling all fatigue. At noon, Minh and two friends returned. They brought buckets, paint cans, and long-handled brooms. "Today we repainted the walls inside the house for you." Thao was touched. "Oh my gosh, you guys keep doing this. I feel so embarrassed." Minh smiled. "It's okay. We just did it because we love Miss Two. Besides, we saw you work so hard, so we helped. The whole afternoon, the smell of paint was in the air." Minh rolled paint from the base of the wall up, while Thao used a small brush to paint the hidden corners. Each white paint stroke was like a new light, covering the mold, covering the sad past. Linh ran around, helping and chatting animatedly. The afternoon sunlight slanted down, reflecting on the wall, everything lit up like a picture frame. When they took a break, everyone sat on the porch drinking water. The wind blew through the areca trees, the leaves rustled. Minh said, "Miss Thao, are you planning to stay here forever?" Thao looked out at the yard that was gradually clearing and said slowly, "Yes, I will definitely stay. Wherever is peaceful, that is my home." Minh nodded, his eyes warm. In the afternoon, they cleaned the well in the backyard. The old well was almost half covered by leaves, sand and dirt. The group took turns scooping out each bucket of muddy water, scrubbing the brick ring around the mouth of the well. The sound of water splashing, the sound of buckets hitting each other, mixed with laughter. When the water became clear again, everyone cheered. Minh bent down, scooped up a ladle, and said excitedly, "The water is clear now, ma'am. You can drink it." Thao tried a sip. It was cold and sweet. She smiled, her eyes sparkling. "It is truly the water from my hometown, as cool as the heart." That evening, Linh said, "Mum, what else are we going to do tomorrow?" "Tomorrow we will sweep the front yard, clean up the altar of our ancestors and plant vegetables. We have to bring our family back to life, my child." "Yes." The next morning the sky was clear. The sound of roosters crowing echoed throughout the neighborhood. Mother and daughter began cleaning the yard. Thao held a large bamboo broom, sweeping piles of dry leaves. Linh gathered the leaves into small piles. The sound of the broom, dragging on the bricks, was rustling. Dust flew up and then dissipated in the wind. The bright yellow sunlight shone through the areca tree, falling on Thao's sweaty hair. The old neighbor named Sao stopped by, holding a basket of ripe bananas. "Seeing you two cleaning the house makes me feel sorry. Mrs. Tu passed away a long time ago. Now that you're back, her soul must be very happy." Thao quickly invited her in for a drink. She looked around and complimented. "It's clean, with a human scent. It's different right away. Look, the wind blowing in feels so cool." Thao smiled. "Yes, I'm planning to plant vegetables behind the house. Do you have any seeds? Please give me some." Mrs. Sao nodded. "Of course. Mrs. Tu used to plant vegetables in the backyard." At noon, Thao went up to the attic and cleaned out the old cupboard. Every time she opened the drawer, the smell of time rushed out. The smell of wood, the smell of paper, the old scent of her grandmother. She found a handkerchief, embroidered with her name, the corner still stained with red thread. She sat down, pressed the handkerchief to her cheek. tears falling. Under the cupboard, she discovered another notebook filled with her grandmother's handwriting. March 12th, sow cabbage. March 19th, pick water spinach. Thao likes to eat sour soup. Reading that, her throat choked up. Linh ran up and asked, "Mom, why are you crying again?" "Mom is not crying, she is smiling," she said, her voice trembling, then hugged her child. That afternoon, Minh brought some bricks to help her repave the front path. Linh played, picked wildflowers to put in vases. The sound of hammers, the sound of bricks hitting each other. The laughter of children mixed together, a strange warmth. Thao sat down and cleaned each old photo frame of her grandmother, one by one. The afternoon light shone through the glass windows, reflecting her gentle face as if it was smiling. She placed the photo on the altar and lit the first incense stick in 15 years. The incense smoke drifted gently, blending with the sunset. The next day it rained. The first rain of the season poured down, water dripping on the tin roof, then overflowing into the yard. Mother and daughter sat by the door, watching the rain, inhaling the smell of wet soil. "Mom, our house is no longer dirty. Now it rains, it looks beautiful." Thao smiled. "Yes, this rain is cool. Tomorrow the trees will be green again." Outside, each drop of water fell on the leaves, pitter-patter, creating a gentle melody. The rain washed away the remnants of time, as if helping them wash away old sadness. When the rain stopped, Thao and Minh went to the back garden to plant vegetables. The soil was soft, their hands cool to the touch. She sowed the seeds, Linh watered them, Minh put up bamboo fences around the beds. The smell of wet soil, the smell of leaves, the smell of new sunshine filled the air. "My child, when these vegetables grow up, we will eat the vegetables we planted ourselves." Linh exclaimed, "Yes, I want to plant tomatoes too." That evening, they lit a fire to cook rice. Thao stood in the kitchen. Linh sat blowing the fan. The smoke drifted across the light. She remembered the old meals with her grandmother. The same smoke, the same smell of braised fish, the smell of new rice. Now, in that kitchen, the same smell. But her heart was that of a mother. Day by day, the house changed little by little. The walls were bright white. The roof tiles were dry. The vegetable garden was green. The tables and chairs were re-varnished. The windows were open to welcome the wind. In the early morning, the rooster crowed to call the sun. In the afternoon, the cicadas chirped. The villagers passing by all smiled. "Mrs. Tu's house has someone living there. It looks so much happier." She just replied, "A house with laughter is alive again." One day, Minh brought some wooden boards and said, "Auntie, I'll make you a board to hang in front of the gate." He carved with a knife the words, "Grandma's house, where we start again." When hung up, the wind blew. The wooden board creaked as if laughing. Thao looked at the words. Her heart trembled. Simple, but complete. In the afternoon, Linh ran around the yard, her hair flying in the sunlight. Her child's laughter echoed far away. Thao sat on the porch steps, holding a cup of tea, her eyes following her child. The wind blew gently. The scent of areca flowers wafted in the air. She whispered to herself, "Grandma, I'm home. Our house is lit again." Night came. The sky was clear. The stars were dense. Thao and Linh spread out a mat on the porch to lie down and watch. "Mom, I love it here. There's no sound of cars here, only the sound of the wind." "Yes, here I can hear my heart, baby." Time passed quickly. 3 months later, the house was completely different. The vegetable garden was lush green. The areca trees were straight. The bougainvillea was in full bloom. Inside, the tables and chairs were shiny. The cabinets were neatly arranged. The curtains were brand new. In the morning, the sunlight shone into every corner, shining on Grandma's photo frame, on Lin's smiling face. The house now has the sound of footsteps, the clack-clack of sewing machines, the chirping of birds, the gurgling of well water, all blending into the sounds of life. Thao has taken on sewing jobs for the neighbors. Everyone loves her and supports her. Every time Mrs. Thao visits, she compliments her. "You sew as well as Mrs. Tu did in the past." She smiles. "I only learned from my grandmother. She taught me that everything must be done with all my heart." One afternoon, Minh stopped by with a bunch of wildflowers. "I brought this for you. Consider it a congratulation for our family." Thao took the flowers and smiled. "Thank you. If Grandma saw it, she would laugh out loud." Minh scratched his head. "Grandma too will surely bless you and Linh." The two looked at each other, then looked at the house that was lit up. In the pale purple sky, the smoke from the kitchen drifted straight. The sound of chickens calling at night echoed. A peaceful feeling spread everywhere. That night, Thao sat down and wrote a few lines in Grandma's notebook. The 90th day since returning to the countryside. The house has revived. My daughter smiles more. I also feel at peace. She closed the notebook and placed it on the altar. Outside, a gentle wind shook the curtain and incense smoke swirled. In the middle of the night, she heard the sound of rain drizzling on the tiled roof, the rustling of leaves. She softly said, "Thank you, Grandma. Thank life. I didn't give up." The next morning, when the sun rose, Linh called out, "Mom, our vegetables have grown." She ran out and saw the young green vegetable bed, the leaves shimmering in the sunlight. The dewdrops sparkled like small gems. She bent down and touched the soil, feeling like she was touching new life. At noon, Thao picked the first bunch of vegetables to cook soup. She scooped the first spoonful and tasted it. The flavor was simple but indescribably delicious. Flavor of hard work, of patience, of love. She looked at her child and said, "Remember, wherever there is love, there is home." Linh nodded, her eyes sparkling. In the afternoon, The sunlight slanted through the areca trellis. The wind carried the scent of magnolia flowers. Grandma's house stood still in the middle of the green garden. The windows were wide open. The curtains fluttered lightly, and laughter rang out in the wind. Everything was simple, but breathtakingly beautiful. At night, yellow light shone from the window frame. On the table, mother and daughter sat sewing Grandma's old shoe, each needle and thread slowly. Outside, fireflies were flying, and frogs were croaking in the distance. Thao looked at her son and said softly, "From now on, we'll stay here, son. We don't need to go anywhere else." Linh smiled, nodded, and leaned on her mother's shoulder. The night wind caressed, carrying the river's vapor. On the altar, incense smoke rose, winding in the light. The image of her grandmother gradually faded in the smoke, but in Thao's heart, she had never left. She closed her eyes, listening to the wind blowing through the tiled roof, listening to her child's steady breathing, listening to her own heart's relief. The house now had breath, joy, and love. And that night, in the middle of the peaceful countryside, Grandma's house lit up like a small flame in the darkness outside. The story ended in gentle sounds. The sound of a bamboo broom in the morning, the sound of an old sewing machine, the laughter of a girl mixed with the sound of the wind blowing through the areca trees. A single mother, an abandoned house, and the journey of cleaning up not just the grass and bushes, but also the sadness to sow hope. Because sometimes the most beautiful thing in life is simply returning home, where there is still a bit of the old scent and a heart that has never grown cold.